Hello, this is Roland Khorshidi-Zada. This week is going to be a very weighty topic. What do we have here? We've got fear, propaganda, death, self-actualization.
It's going to be a fun episode. I'm your co-host, Mike Messier. Mike Messier here as your co-host. And these topics are pretty intense, Roland. So,
and they're timely if the Mayan calendar is anything to go by.
The Mayan calendar is very interesting. You know, a friend of mine, a guy named Harrison, told me that he was exploring some of those Aztec areas, and a tour guide told him that the Mayan calendar prediction of doom and destruction for 2012 is actually not really going to happen, in so many words. This tour guide said that that's just propaganda, as it were, one of our other topics. What do you think?
I happen to agree. I think that the reason why the calendar ends is because the Mayans got tired and they didn't want to do the calendar anymore.
That's right.
Would you?
Probably not. I mean, if you find, 500 years from now, if you find a 2012, 2013 calendar, some kid's college notebook or something, then are you going to think that 2013 was a prediction of the end, for us?
With lack of information, you might draw that conclusion, and then you think, wow, those are some really backwards people.
Right.
On the other end, imagine it's today, 2012, and you're writing out a calendar, and they wrote out their calendar in 1400, or rather carved out the calendar. So 2012 for them would be like the year 2600 for us.
Good point. So you never know. I mean, we'll find out in a couple of weeks if we do another episode, if we all perished or if we lived through the storm. Speaking of storms, how about that? I believe it was called Hurricane Sandy. Was that what it was called?
Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah, back 2.5 weeks ago. And I got a little fearful. I mean, I was in Wickford, Rhode Island, my hometown, and predictions of not really sure what's going to happen and so on and so forth. The Monday of the storm, my electricity went out, and it was out for about 3.5 days. And the Tuesday after the storm, I went to a local coffee house. The owner turned on the TV, and we saw the collapse of part of the Atlantic City Boardwalk in New Jersey go into the ocean, and we saw I think it was 57 houses in Brooklyn burning, and kind of caused a little hysteria in my world, in my own brain. And I went out and bought a whole lot of canned food, Roland.
Wow.
like a lot of canned food.
Preparing for a bomb shelter.
Right.
This is a strike, except by a hurricane instead of by the enemy, whoever that would happen to be.
I bought so much canned food, I started buying canned food I didn't even like, because I was predicting that the canned food I did like, I would get sick of it. So I wanted to buy, other food to mix it up a little bit in the future.
Well, I hope that doesn't mean you'd be living off Spam for the rest of your life.
I didn't get Spam. I got a lot of canned salmon, or salmon, as some people call it. Salmon. You say tomato, I say salmon. And I got a lot of other stuff, a lot of, I think, chili beans and all types of good stuff. So anyone want to party down in Wickford, Rhode Island, you know where to find me. Or maybe you don't. That's probably better off if they don't.
Canned Goods Celebration,
right?
Or CGC.
I can invite folks down there luck to come over to my home and pop open some canned food with me and have a little fiesta or a party.
Yeah, sure, an end of the world party.
Right, but seriously, the Hurricane Sandy. That is death. That is, a lot of death and tough times for people, and signs of perhaps a global collapse, environmental issues. You talk about Al Gore or what have you, and the productions that he made as far as Earth in the Balance. And now we have a situation where the Earth seemingly is out of balance.
That's right. Well, that is what he predicted, that the Earth would be out of balance. Then he warned about global warming and all that stuff, and no one listened. And it was just a disaster. I was driving around the Brockton-Bridgewater area like the day after that happened, and everything was like shredded up and all over the place, and no cars around, and it was cloudy and dark. It was like I was driving in a different town altogether. Yeah,
it's got a scary feel to it. It's barren, and just the whole mood changes. Down in Wakefield, Narragansett, Rhode Island, I was driving around on that Tuesday, and just you could feel in the air a palpable tension, a vibe of disconnectedness. Just people tense, and I fell into it too. I went around looking for batteries for products I don't even have. You know what I mean? So just in case I needed them in the future, these batteries, this canned food. I mean, I fell right into it, and it's just a scary thing, you know, scary times.
It's like, wow, is this actually happening? Because I don't remember Hurricane Bob or Hurricane Andrew being that bad.
No, they weren't at all.
And even those two, I'm digging pretty far back.
Yeah, you know, it's really unfortunate, and but we look at some of our topics on this show: fear, propaganda, death, and then the one that kind of sticks out is a little bit different than this is self-actualization.
Yes.
And that's a topic I like to discuss. What do you think about it, Roland?
Well, in relation to this, I don't see how that quite factors into the equation unless you're content with life and whatever happens, happens, you live, you die, whatever. But self-actualization in general, sometimes people think that they have actually reached self-actualization and they don't know what's ahead of them.
Right.
So it's kind of premature to ever declare that you're self-actualized. It's more like you're self-actualized relative to what's going on right now.
Well, the self-actualization topic, I mean, I think the first thing we might want to try to tackle is what is the definition of self-actualization,
Yes.
you know? And for different people, it probably means different things.
What does it mean to you?
For me, it means you're at a point in your life where you can do the things you want to do while realizing the things you can't do might be out of your control. For instance, I'm not going to be the King of England anytime soon or the President of the United States, but I can be Mike Messier hosting the show with yourself, Roland, and I can go out and make a film. It might take some time, but I know how to do it now. I can get my actors, I can write a script, I can put things together. You know, I can, you know, unlike some folks, I'm lucky enough to have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 feet, 2 hands, and other necessary equipment to do things, and that's always fortunate. But even the person who's, say, paraplegic or quadriplegic in a wheelchair, they still have a mind that's active. They can still do a lot of things. I mean, you look at the late Christopher Reeves, you know, who had that terrible accident with horse riding, and he still went on to direct films and even act in films after that accident, and lead the way for stem cell research and so on and so forth. So self-actualization, I think, to me is very important. It's important that people, you know, kind of get off their tuchus or their rear end or their butt, whatever you want to call it, and kind of do something with themselves, self-actualize, read a book, get some exercise, eat better, whatever it's going to take to get your mind straight.
So you think self-actualization is not enough to realize, but you have to actually follow up on it?
Exactly. I mean, you can think about it. You can think about a lot of things. And for myself, I'm kind of an introverted person in some regard. I like to sit and read a book for hours on end and highlight it with a highlighter. But ultimately, if you don't take that action towards a better person, to be a better person, you're really just kind of spinning your wheels. For instance, yesterday I was listening to an audio book talking about food, and the author of the book was kind of relaying how all of our food is very processed and full of chemicals. And
It is.
yeah, and that's scary too. I mean, talk about an inner conflict, because we like sausage, we like pepperoni, meat, we like poultry, chicken, fish, and all types of stuff. And according to this author of this book, and a lot of that stuff is not really good for us. So for me, I went just one day without eating any type of meat product, and without getting into the graphic details, I do feel a little bit better already, and that's just been a day, you know. So, and I trust me, I mean, you can tell that I like food. I mean, I like candies and sweets and all types of good stuff.
Yeah.
So to try and discipline myself will be a challenge, but I'm going to try little baby steps, as Bill Murray would say, and you know, what about Bob? Little baby steps towards a brighter Mike Messier. What do you think, Roland?
Good, that's a good thing. With food, I was once in California and I saw this organic food in 1998. It was like, what's organic food? Isn't all food organic because it comes from organisms? And then later on I found out that the organic food is actually naturally homegrown food. It's not processed or anything like that. So if you want to stay healthy, then you can look out for organic food, and then it's labeled in the stores and you can see if it's organic or not.
That's great, you know, and we just hope that the food that is labeled organic really is, you know, and we can't control everything. Obviously, we can't go out to an apple orchard and, you know, test the apples. You know, we could, I guess, but we probably won't. It's a challenge, you know. It's a challenge to live in this society where a lot of things seemingly are out of control, and out of our control as individuals. We don't have access to everything that we might like to, you know. Talk about the JFK files even. I mean, for some reason that came to my mind, you know, like what happened to our president, you know, got shot in the head, and there's all these paperworks that are outside of our domain to even look at, you know. And
it'll be interesting when all of that stuff is declassified.
yeah, it's an interesting world, and we'll probably live to see that, hopefully.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
They won't,
Right.
which is the point.
Right. So I still have an uncle named Ike who saw that movie JFK with Kevin Costner, the Oliver Stone film, and he would not stop talking about the film, you know, and that's...
What did he think of it? Was it accurate, inaccurate? Which way did he go?
I think he thought it was accurate, and I think he was just psyched up that this whole topic was being raised. He just had a lot of his own theories, and he was just into it. And
do you think he was an X-Files fan?
Well, this was, I think, the JFK movie with Stone. Wasn't that a little bit before X-Files?
Well, they both came out in '93. I'm just asking in general.
He probably was an X-Files fan. It was actually my stepmother's brother, to be exact, so I wasn't that tight with Uncle Ike, but he's a cool guy. And, you know, so he was into the JFK thing. He might have been into the X-Files. Did you watch that show a lot?
I did.
Yeah, what did that seem to correlate with reality, so to speak? Or?
I honestly don't think so. I mean, I think they hyped up the conspiracies just for the sake of drama. And in fact, in the last episode, you have Cancer Man talking about the end of the world in 2012.
Right.
And clearly we're coming up to that, and that's not going to happen. So if they do an X-Files 3, they'd have to explain why that didn't happen.
Right.
Or maybe just Cancer Man had no idea what he was talking about.
Right. Like it just...
I wouldn't put it past him.
We always seem to go back to movies when you and I talk, which is fine.
But I want to get back into the propaganda.
Please.
Actually step on to that issue for the first time. So, the JFK conspiracies, do you think that there's any propaganda in that? Or it's led to propaganda?
You know, it's a little bit before my time, but I would say that probably there's more to it than just, was it Jack Ruby who shot?
Yes.
The guy, Hinckley, right? Oh, am I getting all these names right? I hope so. But what is it Hinckley that shot JFK?
Yeah.
And then Jack Ruby shot Hinckley?
I think so. I'm sure there will be a fact checker who will let us know if we got it wrong.
You know, I'm also getting confused with the guy who shot Ronald Reagan, who was somebody else. But
yeah, totally different.
But the guy who shot JFK, I don't even know if his name was Hinckley, but I'm thinking it was. He was shot by Jack Ruby, and a whole lot of stuff going on there. You know, who shot who, for who was pushed into who, and stuff like that. And I would think that there's probably more than meets the eye as far as who did what for what reason, I would think. But it was an interesting time back then with the civil rights movement and all types of increased awareness about our government and people, the Black Panthers and all types of groups, you know, kind of jostling to hear their voice heard.
Right.
You know, fascinating time, the 60s for this country. Well, you know, we talk about, even in our medium of choice sometimes, we talk about feature films, and we had that, was it Armageddon, and was there a movie called 2012? And
yeah, there was a movie called 2012.
Yeah.
And it was about the end of the world, but there were some survivors, and they recounted their calendar back to the year 1, but it was like a massive flood and very little civilization left.
Right.
And then there was also I Am Legend, which took place in 2012, after everything was wiped out.
Yeah.
Though I don't know if that was 2012 itself where everything was wiped out, but the society was barren. It was a Will Smith film. There were some aliens around, like they invaded.
Right, I saw that one. He's running around in like the barren city, probably New York City, and he's trying to survive and stuff. And then was there a movie called Cloverfield, which I didn't see?
There was.
Okay, I didn't see that one. Did you see that one?
Yeah, it was a handheld camera directed by J.J. Abrams.
Oh.
It was the exact length of an 8mm film tape.
Which is how long?
I think it's 88 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like a home video, except they're witnessing these extraordinary things like a Godzilla-type monster attacking, and they never explained it because from their point of view, they would never get an explanation.
Right.
So literally all you see is what they see. So it's kind of like a pseudo-reality film that's a horror film.
Interesting. Very interesting. There was one, you might remember this, it was called like Section 8 or something.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it was, these aliens came down and their spaceship got stuck in the air, and then they were, populated, and they were put into this kind of, restrained, almost Holocaust-like situation, by the human beings and so on and so forth. And that was an intense movie. That was pretty good, from what I remember. That was 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. I don't think it was called Section 8. I think that's...
Are you thinking of District 9?
Yeah, District 9. Yeah. Section 8 housing.
Section 8 sounds familiar.
Section 8 housing is what I think, like the folks on Good Times used to live in, Well, we go back to our topics: fear, propaganda, death. What do you think of death? Think there's an afterworld there, Roland, or is it done is done?
I always believed that if we ever talked about religion, that would be the last episode we ever did.
Okay.
And I want to tie back to what we were talking about before with fear and propaganda. A lot of propaganda is geared towards fear, and fear is an irrational mindset where you can't think of something, you can't understand it, so you're afraid of it. So propaganda is based upon people not being able to think of something for themselves that's otherwise. So it's like a form of thought control, or you're trying to influence people who are inclined to think a certain way to think that way.
Right. Well, you said thought control. It makes me think of fluoride. A friend of mine tells me that fluoride that we brush our teeth with has been used in the past for making people less resistant to authority. And that's an ingredient in a lot of our toothpaste, is fluoride. And apparently most governments put fluoride, or most United States areas put fluoride in the water. So when you're brushing your teeth, or if you're drinking tap water, you're drinking this fluoride material, which is good for your teeth, but also perhaps bad for your resilience.
So your mouth is fresh and your mind is fresh for conditioning. So it's like mind conditioner. Put that in with your hair conditioner.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
But someone who's self-actualized and is aware of the world around them, they wouldn't be influenced by propaganda, or at least they're aware that they're being influenced and they could counter it.
Well, I mean,
not everyone reaches that level of actualization.
I don't know if we ever fully can realize 100% actualization, self-actualization, but the other day I was, I canceled cable and internet recently at home because I was sick of just being on Facebook all the time by my own choice.
Yeah.
And I had the TV on early in the morning, and I was trying to do stuff, and then I realized that, this program, the early morning show on the networks, they have a whole lot of commercials. And if you switch the channel during their commercial, you go to the other channel, and I only have 2 stations now without the cable, but they both have the commercials on at the same time. And it's kind of like, you're kind of like, well, what do I do? You turn the TV off for 3 or 4 minutes and then try to catch the program again. Or the radio, for instance. You ever turn on your radio and then you're kind of channel surfing on the radio or station surfing, and you find commercial after commercial on every station. I think a lot of stations, if I'm not mistaken, they program their blocks to have the commercials almost at the same time.
That's correct.
Yeah, so if you're looking for programming, it's hard to find.
Yeah, you can't find the competition. In the old days, they weren't in sync, but now they are.
Right. So that's, is that mind control, or is that just smart business? Who's to say? Is that propaganda, or is that just the American way?
Right. I heard that sometimes, how films are 24 frames or TV is 32 frames per second.
Right.
Sometimes they might insert one single frame of like a product to get it in people's minds subliminally. They don't really notice it.
Yeah.
Like subliminal messaging, but I don't know if that's true, because I can actually notice one frame.
Well, the good old days, they did that a lot. It's been proven, like the early form of film, they would do that. And I don't know if they still do it, but now product placements, that's the big thing now. I mean, you almost can't fund a major motion picture without some type of product placement or some type of tie-in or something.
But that's not the same as just inserting one frame in the middle of nowhere.
No,
I must be more perceptive than other people because I can perceive 1/30th of a second. I heard that the average person can only perceive 1/5 of a second.
I believe you, because I have not seen, unless the tape's been slowed down. So the word slowed down.
Slowed down.
Slowed down. I can't see the subliminal messages, so you got me beat on that.
Oh.
But let's talk about your project, Roland. You've got some stuff in the works.
Yes, that's right. One is called The Phantasm of Fear, it was going to be a 1920s period piece. It was like a horror film / thriller, but no one gets slashed.
Right.
It's two kids are renting this apartment that's haunted, and people always die in this apartment. And this landlord is trying to rent out the place, only it's kind of hard when the place has such a bad reputation, so the rent price is dirt cheap. So these people come in, this couple, and then they don't even have the rent yet. That's how poor they are. The phantom appears and then kills the roommates, and he's like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna rent this place when it's always haunted? And I have some atmospherics there,
Nice.
building up to the tension.
It has a feel to me. I could be totally off base, but when you're talking about it, it has the feel of The Shining almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's intense. That's good. And and the thing for those out there that are watching, is if you can dream it, shoot it. That's what me and my friend Brian Casey say down in Rhode Island about short films. We say if you can dream it, shoot it. So many people that I meet, Roland, are thinking about making a movie. They're thinking about making a movie. They have an idea for a movie, and they just don't move on it. And it's actually frustrating for me to hear it, because some of the ideas that these people that I meet have are actually really, really good. And it's kind of like, well, if I can do it, you can do it. And I say that not out of modesty or anything like that. It's just really true. I was not born into a filmmaking family. I was born into a film watching family. But I just nobody will put up a stop sign and smack you over the head with it. And even if they did, you got to smack them right back and say, well, I'm going to go forward with this idea, this dream, this goal. Actually, I don't even like the idea of the dreams, Roland, because dreams are things that happen when you're asleep. I like the concept of goals, because goals are dreams with timelines.
Right.
That's what I say, and I think it's true. You talk about a guy like Kevin Smith that you mentioned, or even Steven Spielberg or George Lucas. You can name all the great directors, Spike Lee or Catherine Bigelow, who did The Hurt Locker. Catherine Bigelow did The Hurt Locker, and interesting story, she actually beat out her ex-husband, James Cameron, who directed Avatar. I don't know if you knew that little trivia.
No.
Yeah, Catherine Bigelow, director of Hurt Locker, was married to James Cameron, and he did this $300 billion or $300 million budget Avatar movie. She did a very small $1.5 million Hurt Locker movie, and she won Best Picture, and he didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good for her. But all the great directors came from somewhere, and nobody's born with a film camera in their hand. Like, I'm a baby with the film camera. That doesn't happen. You develop yourself, and I like my baby impersonation. I thought that was good. But so that's what I'm trying to do with my shtick, and I know you are too, is trying to make something happen. And it is amazing, when you make a movie. And I was walking down by the water where I lived the other day, and I was looking out on the vast sea, so to speak, in the boats, and I was thinking, hey, I got a movie now,
Yeah.
And like 2 years ago I didn't have it, and so now there's a movie, so that feels pretty good.
And then people are impressed with that. They're like, wow, you have a movie. Wow, that's great.
Right, and then they proceed to tear it apart. Usually, like, oh, you got a movie, that's great.
Critics.
Well, it doesn't make any sense, but it's funny. What type of movies have inspired you, Roland, to try to get in this game?
Honestly, watching movies in general. I'm a science fiction fan,
Yeah,
and one of my influences is Ridley Scott.
nice. Aliens. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And he's the reason why I wanted to do my feature film, which takes place on Mars,
nice.
which has nothing to do with the short films that I'm working on. And then with the silent film, I've always liked the time period of the 1920s.
Oh wow.
In fact, with my Mars film, which I call Designer Mars,
Yeah.
which takes place on a terraformed version of Mars, my idea actually came from watching Metropolis.
Yeah, I love Metropolis.
And I was thinking, well, what would Metropolis be like if it were done today with this
Right.
big futuristic city? And I thought, well, it would probably be built on Mars if it was the future. And then it went from there.
Fritz Lang directed a movie called Metropolis, and for those that haven't seen it, Metropolis is one of those movies that a lot of times, even these days, you'll go to a nice theater and they'll have like an orchestra set up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever experienced that, Roland, but sometimes you'll go to a theater and they'll actually play Metropolis with a live orchestra or some type of band.
I've never seen Metropolis in the theater, only on TV.
Well, it's quite a powerful experience. I hope you get to do that sometime.
I've seen the black and white film, and I saw a colorized version that was actually made in the 80s.
Oh, really?
It wasn't really colorized, it was
Oh,
more like
yeah.
they put color over it.
Right.
And I had this horrible 80s synthesizer soundtrack against it, and then they ran like the subtitles beneath instead of having the cards.
In '98, I think, a movie came out that was not a remake of Metropolis, but it kind of had the same vibe, which is Dark City. I don't know if you ever saw that
I
one.
haven't seen Dark City, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, that's a great movie, and I think if I'm not mistaken, one of my favorites is in that one, Jennifer Connelly, who I've mentioned twice today for whatever reason.
Well, you're a fan.
I guess so. I guess so. Yes. So
You know who I'm a fan of?
Who?
For actresses, Jodie Foster.
oh, Jodie Foster. Yeah,
Yeah.
she won an Academy Award for The Accused, and she's a fantastic actress and a filmmaker too.
Yeah. I like Contact as well, and that kind of ties back into religion. And as I said in the previous episode, the day I discussed religion would be my final episode ever. Oh, New Hollywood. That's an inspiration for me, getting back to what inspired me.
Oh, sure.
Because New Hollywood was a direct reaction to all the establishment films that were going on in the 50s and early 60s. Like these big Titanic clashes and mythical stories and westerns and musicals. Actually, it's a lot like the film industry right now. You have the endless sequels, prequels, remakes. It's very much an establishment, but a new establishment. But it's pretty well established, and I've used that word so many times. So I see the independent film industry today as an alternative to that. Just like New Hollywood was an alternative back then. Films like Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate.
Graduate is a great movie, and recently I've been listening to a lot of Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, who did, I believe, the majority, if not the whole, soundtrack to The Graduate. You know, do 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 do. You know the song.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
So very good.
So with my Mars film, I wanted to come up with an original science fiction idea that wasn't a prequel, sequel, reboot, or remake,
Right.
which will probably make it harder to sell. So people are wondering, well, why the hell are you writing this thing? So my thoughts are, well, I will write this, and if I don't sell it, I'll turn it into a book, or I'll put it into cold storage, and eventually, when I get the clout and I can make the film, I don't have to write the script because I already wrote it.
That sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
One way or another, the film will see the light of day.
Good. You know, if you can dream it, shoot it. You know, make it happen, Roland. That's great. You
Or
know?
could do it on a low budget and improvise with modern technology. You have the green screens, and you can create whatever you want in the background.
Yeah. Very, very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
All right, I think that's all the time that we have for today. See you next time.